My name is Ava. I thought being family meant unconditional support, shared victories, and a safety net when life got hard. Instead, I learned that to some people, family is just another word for convenience, a resource to exploit until it runs dry. They called me unemployed, useless, a failure who couldn't hold down a real job. They laughed at my hobby projects and rolled their eyes when I mentioned my work. For years, I absorbed their mockery, thinking maybe they were right. Maybe I was just fooling myself. Then came the day they walked into my company's lobby, resumes in hand, desperately seeking employment at the very business they'd dismissed as fantasy. They didn't recognize me behind the mahogany desk, didn't connect the dots between the jobless daughter and the CEO nameplate. But I recognized them. And that's when everything changed. Before we begin, I'm curious, where are you listening from today? And have you ever had to prove your worth to people who should have believed in you from the start? Drop a comment below. Sometimes the hardest battles aren't with strangers, but with those who share your last name. The November wind cut through downtown Chicago like a blade, making me pull my coat tighter as I stepped out of my beat-up Honda Civic. The reflection in the restaurant's glass doors told a familiar story, wrinkled blazer, from being stuffed in my back seat, mismatched shoes because I'd dressed in the dark hair escaping from a hasty bun. I looked exactly like what my family thought I was, a mess. The hostess at Gibson's Bar and Steakhouse smiled with that particular brand of pity reserved for the obviously out of place. "They're already seated," she said, leading me through the dimly lit interior, where the smell of aged beef and money hung heavy in the air. The table was too long for a family dinner, positioned prominently where other diners could witness our success. Mom sat in her pearls, the ones she'd inherited from Grandma, and never let anyone forget it. Dad wore his country club golf shirt, the logo positioned just so. My older brother Marcus scrolled through his phone with the importance of someone who managed a Best Buy. My sister Sophia held court in pale pink cashmere, her engagement ring catching the light with every practiced gesture. The only seat left was at the far end, positioned perfectly between the kitchen doors and the restroom hallway. Every time a server pushed through, I'd get a blast of grease-scented air and clanging dishes. Then I noticed the napkins. Everyone had crisp white linen, their names embroidered in gold thread. William, Catherine, Marcus, Sophia. Mine. A single paper napkin, not even the good kind, just a thin sheet torn from a dispenser, folded once and dropped beside my plate like an afterthought. I stared at it for a heartbeat too long. No one said anything. The silence was worse than laughter. "Still drinking just water," Marcus smirked as the waiter approached. "Good for you, sis. Keeping it simple." The conversation turned to careers, as it always did. Sophia practically glowed as she described her latest real estate triumph. The Wilmette property, 7 figures. "My biggest commission yet. They're already calling me for the partner track." "That's our girl," Dad beamed. "Some of us build legacies." He turned to me with that pause, that calculated beat. "And some of us? Well, they try." Mom's smile was thin. "How's the job search going, sweetie? Any prospects?" I folded the paper napkin carefully once, twice. They thought I was unemployed. Had thought so for 3 years, ever since I'd quietly left my corporate position. I'd never corrected them, never mentioned the 18-hour days in a converted garage, the venture capital meetings, the patents filed under my company's name. Why bother? They'd already written my story. "The job market's tough," I said, simply taking a sip of water. Sophia leaned in with manufactured concern. "Well, at least you have all that free time. Must be nice not having real responsibilities." The laughter rippled around the table, polite, controlled cutting. Even Mom joined in, though she quickly redirected. "Marcus, tell us about your Black Friday projections." I let their voices fade into background noise, focusing instead on the paper napkin between my fingers. They were sitting in a restaurant that used my company's inventory management system. The wine they were drinking had been tracked from vineyard to table by code I'd written at 3 a.m., fueled by gas station coffee and spite. When the check arrived in its leather folder, Sophia snatched it with a flourish. "Don't worry, Dad. One day Ava can treat us once she's back on her feet." More laughter. I looked at our server, a young man whose name tag read Devon. I'd seen him before at the coffee shop where I sometimes worked on my laptop. He recognized me too, his eyes widening slightly. "No need," I said quietly. "It's already covered." Sophia's hand froze. "Covered?" "House account." Dad's frown deepened. "What house account?" I picked up the paper napkin one last time, held it between two fingers like evidence, then set it down with deliberate care. "The house you're sitting in." I stood before anyone could process what I'd said, nodding to Devon as I passed. I didn't run, didn't storm out. I simply walked through the restaurant I'd helped digitize past the hostess, whose scheduling software bore my hidden signature, out into the Chicago night that suddenly felt less cold than the table I'd left behind. My hands were steady on the steering wheel as I drove through the empty streets of Chicago. No radio, no phone calls, just the rhythmic sound of tires on wet asphalt and my own breathing. The city lights blurred past my windows, each one a small reminder that the world kept spinning regardless of personal catastrophes. I pulled over near the old warehouse district, engine idling, as I stared at a building I knew too well. 5 stories of brick and broken windows, except for the 3rd floor where new glass gleamed. 3 years ago, I'd signed the lease with everything I had, $3,200 scraped together from tutoring, freelance coding, and a tax return. The space had been a disaster: exposed pipes, concrete floors, no heat. But it was mine. That first winter, I'd coded wearing fingerless gloves, a space heater at my feet, surviving on ramen and determination. I'd built an inventory management system that could predict supply chain disruptions before they happened, track products with 99.9% accuracy, and integrate with any existing infrastructure. But I knew my age and gender would work against me, so I created a shell company, hired a voice actor for phone calls, and let my work speak for itself. 6 months in, I'd landed my first major client, a restaurant group desperate for solutions. They didn't care who I was, only that the system worked. And it did. Within a year, I had contracts with half the establishments in Chicago's Loop. The night I'd tried to share this victory at Sunday dinner, Sophia had laughed. "What, like you're some kind of tech mogul now? This sounds like something from a bad Netflix show?" Dad hadn't even looked up from his whiskey. "You need to focus on realistic goals, Ava. Maybe reception work. You're organized enough." They'd moved on to discussing Marcus's promotion to assistant manager, toasting his success, while I sat there invisible, holding a contract worth more than his annual salary. That's when I'd started documenting everything. Every dismissive comment, every stolen idea, like when Sophia had coincidentally pitched my supply chain optimization concept to her firm, every moment they'd rewritten history to exclude me. Not out of pettiness, but out of preservation. If I ever got to tell my story, I'd need receipts. I drove home to my studio apartment in Wicker Park, kicked off my mismatched shoes, and opened my laptop. The screen's glow filled the dark room as I began the systematic extraction of myself from their lives. First, the utilities. Every single bill was in my name, had been since Dad forgot to pay ComEd, and we'd spent 3 days without power in January. I'd stepped in, put everything under my accounts, set up autopay. They'd never asked, never thanked, never remembered. Click. Electric service discontinuation scheduled. Click. Gas disconnected, effective immediately. Click. Internet and cable terminated. Click. Water service cancellation confirmed. Next came the streaming services, the family phone plan I'd moved them to for the bundle discount, the Amazon Prime account they used daily. One by one, I severed each digital lifeline. The joint checking account my mother had insisted on for emergencies still held $47,000, my emergency fund that they'd occasionally dip into for their own crises. I transferred every penny to my business account and closed it. By 2 a.m., I'd extracted myself from every financial entanglement. They wanted me jobless and dependent. They'd get exactly what they'd asked for, a daughter who no longer existed in their world. I made a list on a yellow legal pad, each item a small rebellion. ComEd 3847 annual, People's Gas 2100 annual, Comcast 2400 annual, Water 800 annual, Cell phones 4200 annual, Insurance Auto 3600 annual, total annual support 16,947s, nearly $17,000 a year invisible as heir to them. Plus the loans that were never repaid, the emergency fixes, the car repairs, the medical bills, when Dad's insurance lapsed. All told, I'd poured over $150,000 into maintaining their lifestyle over the past decade. The email I drafted was simple, subject per your request. You asked me to leave. My support leaves with me. I stared at the send button, then closed the laptop. They didn't deserve an explanation. Let them wake up tomorrow and figure it out themselves, the same way I'd figured out how to build something from nothing, while they laughed at my ambitions. Outside my window, Chicago sparkled in the darkness. Somewhere in Lincoln Park, my parents were probably settling in for the night, confident in their assessment of their failure of a daughter. Somewhere in River North, Sophia was probably Instagram posting about successful families and strong bonds. By morning, they'd learn what those bonds were really worth. And I'd be 3 steps ahead, building the empire they'd never believed in, signing the checks they'd never thought I could write. The paper napkin from dinner lay crumpled in my coat pocket. I pulled it out, smoothed it flat, and pinned it to my vision board right next to my company's incorporation papers and my first $1 million contract. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's removing yourself so completely that they finally realize everything you were to them only after you're gone. Part 3, The Aftermath. Dawn crept across Lake Michigan, painting my apartment in shades of amber and rust. I'd been awake since 4 a.m., laptop open, monitoring the cascade of system alerts as each disconnection took effect. At 6:47 a.m., my phone erupted. 17 missed calls. Mom, 23 missed calls. Dad, 9 missed calls. Marcus, 31 text messages. I let it ring, sipping coffee from my favorite mug, the chipped one from a conference where I'd first pitched my software to skeptical investors. 3 years later, those same investors were begging for board seats. The family group chat was a masterpiece of escalating panic. Dad power's out. Calling ComEd. Marcus internet's down too. And cable. Mom, William, the water just shut off mid-shower. Sophia. What the hell is happening, Dad? They say account was canceled. By the account holder. Mom, Ava, sweetie, there must be some mistake. Please call us. I screenshot everything, filing it in a folder labeled Evidence. November 2023. My best friend Nora called from her apartment 2 blocks away. You actually did it. Every last connection I confirmed, staring out at the city waking up below. Good. You've been their safety net for too long. Let them feel the drop. By noon, the messages had shifted tone. First came Mom's voicemail, her voice trembling with that particular brand of manipulation she'd perfected. Ava, honey, we're family. Whatever upset you, we can work through it. Your father. He didn't mean what he said. You know how he gets. Please just turn the lights back on, and we'll talk. Then Dad, no longer pleading, but demanding. This tantrum has gone far enough. You have responsibilities to this family. Fix this immediately. Marcus tried brotherhood. Hey sis, I know dinner got weird, but this is extreme. Mom's crying. Is that what you wanted? But it was Sophia's text that revealed their true thoughts. Real, mature Ava. Throwing a fit because we pointed out reality. Some of us have actual jobs to get to tomorrow. Fix this before you embarrass yourself more. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I had a business to run. At my office, the one they didn't know existed. My team was putting final touches on our biggest launch yet. A revolutionary supply chain AI that Amazon had been courting us about for months. My lead developer, James, looked up as I entered. You okay, boss? You seem lighter somehow. Just taking out some trash, I said, pulling up our quarterly reports. Revenue was up 340%. We'd gone from 5 clients to 500. My hobby project was now valued at $50 million. That evening, I met Nora for drinks at a tiny jazz bar in Wicker Park. She raised her martini. To freedom from toxic obligations. To family showing their true colors, I countered. We were 3 drinks in when she showed me her phone. You need to see this. Someone had screenshotted a neighborhood Facebook post. My parents, it seemed, had taken their plight. Public ungrateful daughter abandons elderly parents, cuts off utilities out of spite. We gave her everything, and this is how she repays us. Some children are just born selfish. The comments were mixed. Some offered prayers and sympathy. Others, though, remembered things differently. Elderly Bill's 58 and plays golf 3 times a week. Didn't their daughter support them for years? I remember Catherine bragging about never paying utilities. Said her daughter handled all that boring stuff. I stared at the screen, feeling something shift inside me. They weren't just dismissing me anymore. They were trying to destroy my reputation to save their own. You going to respond? Nora asked. I shook my head. Not yet. Let them show everyone who they really are first. But as we left the bar, stepping into the crisp November night, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. They'd lost their meal ticket, and their egos couldn't handle it. The question was, how far would they go to drag me back down? My phone buzzed with a notification from my building's security system. Someone had been buzzing my apartment for the last hour. The video feed showed my father red-faced and furious, shouting into the intercom. I blocked the building's number from my phone and made a mental note to alert security in the morning. If they wanted war, they'd get one. But it would be fought on my terms with my rules. And I had receipts for everything. The assassination of my character began on a Tuesday. I was in the middle of a board meeting when my phone started buzzing incessantly. My assistant Elena glanced at her tablet with increasing alarm. I held up a finger, finished my presentation on our Q4 projections, then stepped into the hallway. What's the situation? Elena's face was grim. You need to see this. They've gone nuclear. The Facebook post had been shared 847 times. My father had crafted a masterpiece of manipulation, complete with old family photos, where I'd been carefully cropped to look isolated, disconnected. The narrative was devastating in its simplicity. Ungrateful daughter with mental health issues abandons family who sacrificed everything for her. But it was the details that cut deepest. They'd included just enough truth to make the lies believable. Yes, I'd struggled with anxiety in college, who hadn't? Yes, I'd been unemployed for 3 years while building a company. Yes, I'd cut them off without warning after decades of being bled dry. Sophia had chimed in with her own posts, each one more dramatic than the last. My sister always resented our success. Instead of being happy for us, she chose jealousy. We tried to help her find direction, but some people prefer to play victim. Marcus added his own spin on LinkedIn. Of all places, family challenges can impact professional growth. Despite our best efforts to provide guidance and support to my sister, she chose isolation over integration. A reminder that success requires both ambition and emotional intelligence. I stood in my office hallway watching my character get filleted in real time. The comments ranged from sympathy for my poor family to outright attacks on my mental stability, work ethic, and basic human decency. Should we respond? Elena asked. I thought about the folder on my desktop. Years of receipts, bank statements, text messages, recordings of their casual cruelty. One click, and I could destroy their narrative. Not yet, I said. Schedule a meeting with legal. If they want to play with defamation, let's make sure we're ready. But by Thursday, the situation had escalated beyond social media. I was leaving my office building when a reporter approached. Ava Chen Miranda Wells from Channel 7. Your family claims you've stolen money from joint accounts. Care to comment? I kept walking. No comment. They're saying you have a history of instability, that this isn't the first time you've lashed out. I stopped, turned, looked her dead in the eye. I said no comment, but she'd planted the seed. By evening news, the story had evolved. Local family torn apart by financial dispute ran with my LinkedIn photo next to the word accused. My clients started calling. 3 requested meetings to discuss our partnership going forward. An investor texted asking if I needed to disclose any family litigation that might impact the company. I spent the night on the phone with my lawyer David, a shark in a 3-piece suit who'd helped me structure my company to be bulletproof. "They're making a mistake," he said. "Going public means discovery. Do they really want their financial records examined? They think I'll cave to protect my reputation. Will you?" I looked out at the Chicago skyline lights twinkling like stars I'd wished on as a kid, back when I still believed family meant something. "No, but I won't fight in the mud either. When I respond, it'll be with facts." Friday morning brought a new development. An email from my mother sent to my professional address. "Ava, this has gone too far. Your father is having chest pains from the stress. Sophia's engagement might be called off because of the scandal. Marcus could lose his job. Is this what you wanted? To destroy your family? We're willing to forgive everything if you just come home and fix what you broke. The utilities, the accounts, the lies you're spreading, we can move past it all. You're still our daughter. But if you don't stop this immediately, you won't be. Love, Mom." I read it twice. The threats wrapped in concern. The ultimatum disguised as forgiveness. The casual erasure of their own actions. My finger hovered over the reply button. So many things I wanted to say. Years of words stuck in my throat, finally ready to spill out. Instead, I forwarded it to my lawyer with a single note: "Add this to the file." Then I did something they'd never expect. I went to work, closed a deal with a major hotel chain, approved bonuses for my team, interviewed candidates for our expanding operations. Because the best response to people trying to tear you down, keep building yourself up. But I knew this was just the eye of the storm. They'd escalated from private manipulation to public warfare. And somewhere in their desperation, they'd make a mistake. When they did, I'd be ready with the truth, all of it. The mistake came wrapped in legal letterhead. Tuesday morning, a process server found me at my favorite coffee shop. The lawsuit was ambitious theft, emotional distress, elderly abuse, breach of fiduciary duty. My parents were seeking $500,000 in damages, plus the immediate restoration of all utilities and services. I actually laughed. The server looked uncomfortable as I signed for the papers. "Sorry," I said. "It's just elderly abuse. My dad's 58 and deadlifts twice his body weight." David, my lawyer, was less amused when I brought him the papers. He spread them across his desk, reading with the intensity of a surgeon examining x-rays. "They're claiming you manipulated them into financial dependence, then cut them off maliciously." He looked up. "They list your mother's anxiety medication and your father's heart condition as evidence of the emotional damage you've caused. His heart condition from eating steak 5 nights a week. They've hired Pemberton and Associates." David's expression tightened. "Big firm? Expensive? How are they affording this?" I knew exactly how. The same way they'd afforded everything else, by leveraging other people. Sophia's fiancé came from old money. They'd probably spun him a story about protecting family assets from an unstable relative. "So what do we do?" David smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "We countersue, and we bury them in discovery." The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in legal warfare. Every financial record, every text message, every email, all of it became evidence. My family had expected me to crumble under the threat of exposure. They hadn't expected me to embrace it. The depositions were scheduled for the first week of December. But before we could get there, the universe delivered poetic justice in the form of a WhatsApp message. My cousin Tyler, the family's self-appointed neutral party, had stayed silent during the whole ordeal. So when his message popped up at 11 p.m., I almost ignored it. "Ty, you need to see this. I'm sorry I didn't send it sooner." Attached was a screenshot from the family group chat, the one I'd been removed from. The timestamp was from 2 days after I'd cut them off. Dad. She fell for it. Actually thinks we kicked her out because we were done with her. Sophia. How long before she comes crawling back? Marcus, I give it a week. She can't function without us. Mom. Make sure to document everything. When she begs to come back, we'll have leverage. Dad. The trust fund access alone is worth keeping her around. She doesn't even know about the inheritance clause. Sophia genius. Let her throw her tantrum. When Grandma's estate settles next year, we'll need her signature. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Trust fund. Inheritance clause. My grandmother had passed 5 years ago, leaving everything in a complex trust. I'd been told there was nothing for me, that she disapproved of my lifestyle choices. Tyler sent another message. There's more. Grandma left you 30% of everything. They've been hiding it, waiting for the 5-year mark when they could claim abandonment. My hands shook as I forwarded everything to David. Within hours, he'd filed amendments to our countersuit. Fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, conspiracy. The screenshots spread like wildfire. Tyler, bless his conscience, had shared them with other family members. Aunts, uncles, cousins, people who'd believed my parents' version of events suddenly saw the truth. My Aunt Linda called first. Ava, honey, I'm so sorry. We had no idea. Your mother told us you were unstable, that you'd threatened them. The family Facebook group imploded. Comments poured in. They said she was mentally ill, but they were plotting. I lent them money because they said Ava left them destitute. This is criminal. Literally criminal. But the real blow came from an unexpected source. Devin, the server from that final dinner, reached out via LinkedIn. I saw the news about your family situation. I recorded that dinner on my phone. We do it for protection after a customer threatened me last year. Your father saying you're too old to freeload after I personally served you there every week, always seeing you pay. I thought you should know I have proof if you need it. The video was damning. Crystal clear audio of my father's dismissal, Sophia's mockery, my mother's silence. But worse or better was what happened after I left. They'd stayed another hour laughing about how they'd finally put me in my place, planning how to maximize their benefit from my inevitable return. David's eyes gleamed as he watched it. This changes everything. They can't claim emotional distress when they're on video celebrating your pain. Within 48 hours, Pemberton and Associates withdrew from the case. My family's lawsuit evaporated like morning mist. But mine remained, now bolstered by evidence of fraud, defamation, and conspiracy to hide an inheritance worth approximately $2.8 million. The public narrative shifted overnight. Local news picked up the story, but now with a different angle. Family accused of defrauding successful daughter out of millions. I gave one interview sitting in my office with the Chicago skyline behind me. Calm, composed, factual. I built my company while my family told everyone I was unemployed. I paid their bills while they called me a failure. I supported them while they plotted to steal my inheritance. This isn't about revenge, it's about truth. The interviewer asked what I wanted from all this. Just what's mine. And the hope that other people in similar situations know they're not crazy. Sometimes the people who should love you most are the ones who see your success as their personal ATM. The segment went viral. Financial abuse is real started trending. Hundreds of stories poured in from people who'd experienced similar exploitation. But the sweetest vindication came in the form of a certified letter from my grandmother's estate lawyer. Inside was a document I'd never seen, her real will. In her shaky handwriting, a note. To my granddaughter Ava, the only one who never asked me for money, who visited because she loved me, not my bank account. I see your strength. Don't let them dim your light. 30% of her estate. Plus, a separate educational trust she'd created just for me, hidden from the family's grasping hands. I sat in my office holding that letter and cried for the first time since this all began. Not from pain or anger, but from the knowledge that someone had seen me. The real me. My family had tried to erase my contributions, steal my inheritance, and destroy my reputation. Instead, they'd shown the world exactly who they were and set me free. The December wind rattled the windows of the federal courthouse as I climbed the marble steps. My heels clicked with purpose, echoing in the vast lobby. David walked beside me, briefcase in hand, his presence a steady reminder that I wasn't alone in this. Conference room 4B was sterile white walls, fluorescent lights, a long table that seemed designed to emphasize distance between parties. My family was already there, huddled with their new lawyer, a nervous-looking man who kept adjusting his tie. They looked smaller somehow. Dad's golf tan had faded to something sallow. Mom clutched her purse like armor. Marcus kept checking his phone with the desperation of someone waiting for rescue. Sophia sat rigid, her engagement ring notably absent from her finger. I took my seat across from them. We hadn't been in the same room since that dinner, and the air crackled with unspoken accusations. The mediator, Judge Chen, no relation thankfully, entered with the gravity of someone who'd seen too many families destroy themselves over money. She reviewed the files with practiced efficiency, occasionally glancing up with barely concealed incredulity. "Let me summarize," she began. "Mr. and Mrs. Chen, you're accused of hiding a substantial inheritance from your daughter, fraudulently presenting her as unemployed while she was supporting your household and conducting a public defamation campaign when she withdrew financial support. Is that correct?" Their lawyer started to object, but Dad cut him off. "She abandoned us. Cut off utilities in winter? What kind of daughter?" "The kind who paid those utilities for 7 years," I said quietly. "My first words to them since November. While you told everyone I was a failure." Judge Chen raised a hand. "Let's review the evidence." What followed was a systematic dismantling of every lie they'd told. Bank records showing my payments, screenshots of their messages, the video from the restaurant, Tyler's screenshots of their conspiracy, my grandmother's real will. With each piece of evidence, my family seemed to shrink further. Mom started crying, not her usual manipulative tears, but something rawer. Marcus put his head in his hands. Sophia's mask finally cracked, revealing something that might have been shame. "The inheritance trust Judge Chen continued legally belongs to Ms. Ava Chen. The attempt to hide it constitutes fraud. The defamation campaign opens you to significant liability. I strongly suggest you consider settlement before this goes to trial." Their lawyer whispered urgently to them. Dad's face flushed darker with each word. Finally, he exploded. "She owes us. We raised her, gave her everything." "No," I said, my voice carrying years of suppressed truth. "You gave me a roof while I paid for it. You gave me criticism while I built an empire you couldn't see. You gave me ridicule while I gave you thousands of dollars you never acknowledged. You were supposed to be grateful," Mom whispered. "For what? For being your ATM? For letting you take credit for my work? For pretending I was nothing, so you could feel like something?" The room went silent. David slid a folder across the table. "Our settlement offer. Full restoration of the inheritance trust to Ms. Chen. Public retraction of all defamatory statements. No contact order going forward. In exchange, Ms. Chen drops the countersuit for damages." It was generous. More than they deserved. But I wanted this over. Sophia spoke for the first time. "The company you built? It's real." I pulled out my phone, showed them the website, our client list, the team page with my CEO photo, the recent TechCrunch article about our Series B funding. $50 million valuation, I said simply. "We process inventory for half the restaurants in Chicago, including the one where you last saw me." The irony wasn't lost on them. They'd eaten at my table while calling me jobless. How, Marcus asked weakly. While you were laughing at my hobby, I was coding 16 hours a day. While you were toasting Sophia for stealing my ideas, I was filing patents. While you were planning to steal my inheritance, I was building something you could never take. Judge Chen cleared her throat. Do we have an agreement? Their lawyer nodded hurriedly. Documents were signed. The trust would be transferred within 30 days. The public retraction would go live by evening. As we gathered our things, Mom reached out as if to touch my arm. I stepped back. Ava, please, we're still family. No, I said firmly. Family doesn't require a court order to tell the truth. Family doesn't plot to steal from each other. Family sees each other's success and celebrates it, not schemes to profit from it. Where will we go? Dad asked. The house, I realized, was in foreclosure. Without my payments, they couldn't maintain their lifestyle. That's not my problem anymore. I walked out of that courthouse into the bright December afternoon. The sun was sharp and clean against the snow, and for the first time in years, I could breathe without the weight of their expectations crushing my chest. David patted my shoulder. You did good in there. It doesn't feel like winning. It's not supposed to. It's just supposed to feel finished. That evening, their retraction went live. Simple, factual, legally mandated. The comments flooded in support for me, condemnation for them. But I didn't read them. I was done living in their narrative. 3 weeks later, the inheritance transferred. I donated a third to a foundation supporting young entrepreneurs from difficult families. Another third went into trust for my future children with ironclad provisions against family exploitation. The last third that funded the expansion that would take my company national. They'd tried to steal my future by erasing my past. Instead, they'd given me the freedom to build something entirely my own. Spring arrived early in Chicago that year, melting the last stubborn patches of snow by late February. I stood in my new office top floor of a building in the loop windows overlooking the river, where architectural boats would soon resume their tours. The space still smelled like fresh paint and possibility. Ms. Chen, my assistant, knocked gently. They're here for the interviews. Right. Today, we were hiring for our new Chicago headquarters. With the Series B funding and the inheritance finally settled, we were expanding from 50 employees to 200. I'd insisted on being part of the interview process for key positions, old habits, from when every hire could make or break us. I settled into the conference room reviewing resumes with my HR director, Patricia. The morning flew by in a blur of candidates, each bringing their own energy and ambition. Then Patricia slid the next resume across the table, and my coffee mug paused halfway to my lips. Marcus Chen, Operations Manager Sophia Chen, Business Development Director. I can remove them from the schedule, Patricia offered quietly. She knew our history, everyone did after the story went viral. I stared at their resumes. Impressive on paper. Marcus had been laid off from Best Buy after corporate restructuring. Sophia's real estate firm had folded after her scandal-tainted name drove away high-end clients. Their addresses were different, now cheaper neighborhoods, the kind where pride goes to die. No, I heard myself say. Send them in, one at a time. Don't tell them I'm here. Patricia raised an eyebrow but nodded. Marcus entered first, shoulders hunched in an ill-fitting suit. He was halfway through his practice spiel about leveraging synergies when he spotted me. The color drained from his face. Ava, the word came out strangled. Please continue with your presentation. I kept my voice professionally neutral, the same tone I used with any candidate. He stumbled through the rest, hands shaking as he clicked through PowerPoint slides. When he finished, the room fell silent. Why should we hire you? I asked. Marcus's mouth closed, opened again. I need this job. I'm good at operations. My references. Your references include Dad, who's currently working night security, and your former manager who told us you were adequate but uninspired. I set down his resume. What else do you have? For the first time in my life, I saw my brother cry. Not dramatically, just quiet tears sliding down his cheeks. I'm sorry. God, Ava, I'm so sorry. We were wrong. I was wrong. I see your company everywhere now, every restaurant, every hotel. You built something incredible, and I mocked me for it, called me delusional, told people I was mentally unstable. Yes, the word was barely a whisper. I let the silence stretch, watching him shrink in his chair. The brother who'd loomed so large in my childhood, who'd dismissed my dreams with casual cruelty, reduced to begging for a job at the company he'd ridiculed. Thank you for your time, I said finally. We'll be in touch. He stood on unsteady legs. At the door, he turned back. I know I don't deserve it, but you look good, Ava. Successful, happy. I'm glad one of us made it. Then he was gone. Sophia's entrance was different. She walked in with her chin-high designer bag, clutched like a shield, probably the last expensive thing she owned. The moment she saw me, her facade cracked, but she recovered quickly. Well, she said, sitting without invitation, this is unexpected. Is it you applied to my company? I applied to Inventec Solutions. I didn't realize. She stopped reorganized. Actually, I did realize. Patricia mentioned the CEO would be present. I just hoped that I'd be too professional to make this personal, that you'd be better than us. The honesty surprised me. I gestured for her to continue her presentation. Unlike Marcus, she didn't stumble. Her pitch was polished, her ideas solid. She'd clearly done her research, understanding our business model better than most candidates. When she finished, she folded her hands and waited. You're qualified, I admit it. Overqualified, actually. Why aren't you at another real estate firm? Sophia's perfect posture finally broke. Because I'm toxic. My name, our family scandal, I couldn't get an interview anywhere that mattered. I've been doing freelance social media management for small businesses. Turns out being publicly exposed as a fraud and a thief isn't great for career prospects. Imagine how it feels to be called unemployed while running a multi-million-dollar company. I know. She met my eyes directly. I know what we did. What I did. Taking credit for your ideas, letting Dad and Mom use you, joining in their lies. I told myself it was just sibling rivalry, that you were too sensitive. But watching you these past months, seeing what you built while we tore you down, I was jealous, Ava. So jealous I couldn't see straight. And now I'm asking for a job from my little sister, who turned out to be the only real success in our family. She laughed bitterly. The irony isn't lost on me. I studied her for a long moment. The perfect makeup couldn't quite hide the stress lines. The designer bag had worn corners. The confidence she'd worn like armor had cracks showing through. We'll be in touch, I said. Sophia stood, gathered her things with practiced grace. At the door, she paused. That night at the restaurant. When you said it was your house, the waiter told us later you own part of that chain, that your software runs their entire operation. Dad couldn't finish his steak. Good to know. I'm proud of you, she said quietly. I know I have no right to be, but I am. After she left, Patricia and I sat in silence for a moment. What are you thinking? Patricia asked. I turned to look out at the city, at the buildings reaching toward clouded skies, at the river, cutting its patient path to the lake. I'm thinking about second chances, and whether people who've shown you their worst deserve to see your best. What does your gut say? That success is the best revenge, but kindness is the best victory. I made my decision. Not that day, but 2 weeks later, after background checks and reference calls, and long nights thinking about what kind of leader I wanted to be. Marcus didn't get hired. Not because I was punishing him, but because he genuinely wasn't right for the role. I sent him a personal note with recommendations for positions at other companies that better matched his skills. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was grace. Sophia was different. Her skills were undeniable, her contrition seemed genuine, and frankly, she understood our target market in ways that would be valuable. I hired her as a junior coordinator, not the director role she'd applied for, but a chance to prove herself without trading on our shared last name. She accepted with gratitude that seemed foreign on her face. On her first day, she found a small note on her desk. Everyone deserves the chance to build something real. Don't waste yours. We didn't become friends. The wounds were too deep, the history too complicated. But we became something more important: professionals who respected each other's capabilities. She excelled in her role, bringing in 3 major clients in her first quarter. She never once mentioned our relationship to colleagues, never tried to leverage our connection. 6 months later, at the company's summer party, I watched her training a new intern with patience I'd never seen from her before. The girl reminded me of myself at that age, eager, overlooked, burning with ideas no one wanted to hear. Your CEO started in a warehouse, I heard Sophia tell her. Coding all night, ignored by everyone who should have supported her. Now she runs one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the Midwest. Remember that when someone tells you your ideas don't matter. The intern's eyes widened, glancing across the party to where I stood. I raised my glass slightly in acknowledgement, then turned back to my conversation with potential investors from Seattle. Later that evening, as the party wound down and the city lights reflected off the river like scattered stars, Patricia found me on the terrace. No regrets, she asked, gesturing toward where Sophia was helping coordinate cleanup. None, I said, and meant it. She's good at her job. That's all that matters. Very professional of you. I learned something important this year, I said, watching boats drift by below. The opposite of being used isn't using others in return. It's building something where everyone's contribution is seen, valued, and fairly rewarded. Where no one has to pretend to be less so, others can feel like more. That's quite a philosophy. It's the only one I know how to live by now. My phone buzzed a message from Tyler sharing a photo from his daughter's graduation. I'd paid for her coding bootcamp, part of the fund I'd established for family members who'd been caught in the crossfire. Not my parents, never them, but the cousins and nieces and nephews who deserved better than the legacy of manipulation they'd inherited. The autumn wind picked up, carrying the promise of another Chicago winter. But I didn't feel cold. For the first time in my life, I was exactly where I belonged, not at the edges of someone else's table, begging for scraps of acknowledgement, but at the center of something I'd built with my own hands. My family had mocked me for being jobless and useless. They'd walked into my company seeking employment without recognizing the woman they'd dismissed. The irony was poetic, but the reality was simpler. I'd survived their worst and built my best. The city stretched out before me, full of promise and possibility. Somewhere in it, my parents were learning to live without a safety net. My brother was rebuilding his resume. My sister was earning her second chance one day at a time. And me, I was finally fully, unapologetically myself. The quiet one who'd spoken loudest through action. The failure who'd succeeded beyond their wildest dismissals. The forgotten daughter who'd remembered her own worth. My name is Ava Chen. I am the CEO of Inventech Solutions. I am nobody's meal ticket, nobody's fallback plan, nobody's secret keeper. I am enough. I always was. They just couldn't see it. Their loss. Or watched karma deliver justice to those who underestimated you. I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't making them pay, it's making them watch you soar without them. Stay strong and never let anyone dim your light.